You're listening to Wabi-sabi Podcast, and I am your host, Adam Yasmin. Welcome to episode 41. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the show. This is a show of one, produced and hosted by me. It means a lot if you subscribe to it either through Substack or wherever you enjoy your podcasts. If possible, please leave a review. It definitely helps with the algorithmic dance of life. And finally, if you're enjoying these episodes, whether you are a new listener or returning, please consider making a one-time donation. It helps with gear improvements and increasing the just general output of these episodes. And you can do that on my website at adamyasmin.com or through my Instagram at adamyasmin_. So as we approach the end of the year, I'm really excited to share this week's episode with you with my new friend, Bill Lowndes. He is a CEO and co-founder of readup.com, an amazing sanctuary for promoting online reading that's free of distraction, free of advertisements, and is a platform that connects readers as well as promotes writers for their content. Had a really fun time talking to Bill, and I'm very sure that he's going to be a returning guest very soon. So enjoy this episode. Please leave some feedback. And without further ado, here is Bill Lowndes. Bill, it is an honor to have you on the program. I call this episode Bill and Adam's Existential Adventure just for the Zoom invite, and I may keep that as the name of the episode. How are you?
I was already, and I am currently shaking with excitement, but now I'm positively like fearful. It's gone beyond nerves to like, what have I gotten myself into? Hopefully I'll chill out over the course of the first few minutes, but tell me what we're going to talk about. This is fun. Thanks for having me.
We are. I never go into these conversations in any sort of premeditated sense. I don't have like a list of questions. There are always like topics that we can hover around, but it's really, a slow and deep conversation series that, we can't help but get somewhat existential about it because of the nature of the time that we're living in, the name of the show, the fact that a lot of my conversations lately have been around focusing on, the just pondering about so-called modernity through the lens of impermanence and imperfection. And it's not from a place purely of critique, although there's a lot of room for that right now. Especially just in the time that we've been talking about doing this episode, there's been here's a great place to start. It's like, I'm still wrapping my head around, why do we need a metaverse right now? We already have a metaverse. We exist in a metaverse. We have we're in these boxes, it is kind of Brady Bunch style. But watching the news events surrounding Frances Haugen, Facebook whistleblower, the bombshell that she laid out, and then for Facebook to follow suit with, we're doing this brand new thing and it's going to change the world, and that in parallel with accelerated existential climate change is just like, why are we always going to be like ostriches with our heads in the proverbial sand?
Yeah, just moving too motherfucking fast.
Yes,
like going too fast. And I'm so glad that you said that we can have a conversation that is slow and deep. I mean, these are like these are my words. And then what you started describing as like what's going down in the world in the time since we've last connected, it's fast and shallow. And you don't want to live in a way, let me say that differently. I don't want to live in a way that I'm just frustrated with all of it all the time. And yeah, I feel like maybe the audience should know that you and I like barely know each other, but we've talked for like a couple of like very brief moments and traded a few emails enough to be like, oh, we're on the same page about this thing. And that thing, I mean, I was just literally, this is just to get like right to it. Last night was thinking about an update to my personal website. If you go to billloundy.com, what do you see? And I'm just like, I need at the very top of it, big words that say slow, deep, and real. It has been like a part of my company building process, my life, like my personal, soul searching that led to what I'm sure we'll talk about over the course of this conversation, which is what's happening specifically in the technology industry and in, for lack of a better term, cyberspace right now. But it's fast and it's shallow and fake. And those terms are the opposite of slow and deep and real. So yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the work that you do also is onto this same thing, like how do we slow down and how do we get more deep and more real with each other? It's hard work and it's emotional and it's taxing, but it sure as hell is not the metaverse. I know, like, yeah. But what are your how have you lived the last couple of weeks? Do you look at all this stuff and have just pure dread constantly? Because I promise you I don't, although that's somehow how it sounds when I describe my worldview.
I mean, that's a good question, because on the one hand, from the perspective of like a humane technologist, a former UX designer, a visual artist who, like, I was in this like cool like iPhone only artist. Like I was using an iPhone as like a digital canvas from 2012 to 2015. Like there was, from that perspective, like, yeah, it's worrisome. It's worrisome because there you cannot unsee you cannot unsee this uptick in like last night I was just reading about what's been happening in British Columbia with these unbelievable floods, like just torrential. Like some parts of British Columbia are just like cut off from other parts, from like maybe some like a transcontinental highway system. And just 140 days ago, Canada recorded its highest ever recorded temperature of like 49.6 Celsius, which we in the States know as 121 Fahrenheit, in fucking northern British Columbia. And at the end of June, like just that duality, just that polarity of those two facts, just to sit and look at those facts now as like a tweet or as an infographic or as news, as a video coverage.
It's incomprehensible.
It's incomprehensible.
It's too much information. And in the I can't remember if it was a Netflix thing, but the Bo Burnham musical event or whatever just nailed on this.
Where it's just him.
Yeah, and the too much of everything. I can't remember what the exact words were, but it's like too much of everything all the time. Like when you started saying like somewhere is hot, I'm not proud of like having like a switch flipped in my brain that was like, oh my God, Adam's going to tell me that like climate change is real again, and we're going to have to, and when you said it before too, I didn't mean to like climate change is just this thing that every now and again, we just like lob into our conversations and we like punt it over and then we wait for the other person to punt it back to us. And it's too big. It's too big for us to understand. It's incomprehensible. COVID is the exact same way. I've had, I don't know, we can take the conversation in so many different directions. You can talk about just culture itself right now as this big, really challenging thing because of humans' fundamental inability to comprehend. I have a hard time existing. and I'm not afraid to admit that. I think it's a kind of strange thing to say out loud. I don't know when the last time I said it like that was, but there's like a lot of people talking about mental health now is like the most casual thing in the world. Everyone everywhere is kind of like publicly acknowledging and wrangling with the ways that we're all screwed up. Like we've all got especially post-COVID. I mean, in the last couple of years, with everyone that I love and everyone who matters in my life, I just talk casually about my own mental breakdowns and their mental breakdowns, and literally things like anxiety attacks and freakouts and like losing our motherfucking minds, like running in the streets, screaming wild, naked animals, going crazy. And this is a function of like this like widespread confusion that I think is amplifying. It's going up and up and up and up. I think we're getting more and more and more confused. And I feel kind of silly and stupid sometimes talking about it out loud because it's embarrassing. And I feel like my ex-girlfriend, who I still love so much and who's a major part of my life, used to joke that like I'm a preacher or a prophet or someone who just loves to pontificate. I love to go telling people all this stuff. But I have my own story, and I hope to be able to share it with you and with others more often. And I haven't done it a lot over the course of the last several years because the story is about turning inward, unplugging from everyone and disappearing from the world and saying, I'm done with all this noise, all this. I don't want to have opinions publicly on political topics. I mean, I did end up voting in the presidential election, but I thought about just like not doing it. I've been like journaling and writing prolifically throughout the process, or what for me feels prolific, just a few pages every few days or something like that. But in this journey, I really have come away from it with a combination of optimism and enthusiasm and excitement. And that's what I really do want to work through with you. But dude, I have a question first. You said like something when you were talking about your experience earlier in your career before you got on about climate change. You were like, I wrote it down. You said like, you cannot unsee. And I was like, oh my God, we're opening up, the curtains to see Oz, because I know what you're describing, but what is it? I too worked in Silicon Valley. I still, I'm building an app. I'm in the vortex for sure, all day, every day. And I know what my answer to that question is, which is like this horrifying, groveling, despicable, disgusting vision of myself, which is like literally the muscles in my face are slack, my brain is turned down, and I'm scrolling through a feed of bullshit. And that is the thing that I can't unsee. And I've had to go to great lengths in my life to remove this shit. Like for example, I don't have a LinkedIn because one time I was like scrolling through, and at this point I had been like years into the humane technology movement, and this was years ago, but I was like on LinkedIn to make a connection, do a thing, connect the bits and bots, and then I'm sitting there scrolling through that shit. And dude, I have snapped many, many times and lose my mind. Delete, not deactivate, like get me out of this. I need to get free from this. And it's emotional, it's heavy, like it's silly to talk about. Everyone's exhausted hearing about other people's, how do you feel about social media? You know, we've gotten to this point of like calloused about the conversation where we don't still keep getting into it. And that's a sign of like, you know, abusive relationship, harmful, toxic energies, just moving back and forth and stuck that way. We are stuck right now. And the
Yeah.
world is devolving because of it.
I mean, it
Rant
also
complete.
touches,
Sorry about that.
no,
That's
no,
like,
no.
I guess
That's
you're pulling it out of me, but these are like, yeah, I get emotional about this stuff, dude, because people are doing it intentionally. That's the
yeah, but
part that's wild to me.
what's important to remember is that most people aren't becoming emotional about it. And so there is, I'm not saying it's like you should assume the responsibility of like being a channel, right? An emotional channel or an emotional like
Yeah,
nerve. It's not to
yeah,
say that, but
yeah.
I wouldn't shy away from it because now there's this growing industry of like, you know, having finished Kevin Roos's book, Future Proof, like he mentioned, he was
Mhm.
talking about, he himself, a New York Times like tech journalist, was talking about like I needed to hire a fucking phone coach for 30 days and figure out how to take a 30-day digital
Yeah,
detox. And he's
yeah.
like, phone coaches are like the career of the future. And I like paused the book and I laughed because I
Mhm.
like that's kind of exactly where I'm going personally in my own journey, having come away from like 5 years as a freelance UX designer, uh designing like absolute, I don't want to say absolute garbage. See, that's my emotion.
Yeah,
My
yeah, yeah,
emotions are going to say absolute garbage, but there's just no social utility whatsoever. And so to go back 5 minutes ago to your first question is like, do I experience dread? I am a parent to a 6-year-old daughter. I can't afford right now to like experience dread. I mean, we already like before
yeah,
parenthood, there was this feeling of like, I don't know, the world's too fucked up. I can't consciously bring a person into this world. And somehow in that thinking about parenthood process with my partner, we went from that of like, I'm not bringing someone in here, this world's too fucked up. We somehow
yeah,
transcended into actually, if we bring in, you know, good people, anyone, if we could bring in anyone to help unfuck the world, that would be a lovely thing. Again, it's not from a place of like altruism or like
yeah.
some idealist or superiority complex, not at all. It's just helping unfuck the world is one, you know, sort of simple way of saying that. So
Would you say
I
that
can,
is that your number one? It's weird to say that you have a number one focus in life because I think most of us like bop around and we're like, oh shit, we're stressed about finances. Or we're like, oh my God, my relationship right now is on ice. Like we're going through like a dry spell in bed and we haven't had a hot date in a while. Or, you know, there's just so many examples of this, you know, like my garden's getting a little bit brown, my extracurricular activities are waning. Like there's so we try to fill all these buckets. I don't think everyone should feel like me, that the meaning of their life is creating positive impact, creating and spreading positive impact. Um, and I know, for example, that my personal decision not to have children, first of all, it's not a done deal. I don't consider any decision in my life set. I'm 34 years old right now. In case that even remotely matters to this conversation. But as far as either adopting or biologically having kids right now, it is not a part of my, like, it's not in my consciousness ever under any circumstance. But I'm also at an age where a lot of my peers and contemporaries, people like you, are starting families, talking about starting families, or have, you know, growing families. And I think I am, well, I know I'm in the anomaly and just being like, that is something that I'm comfortable deprioritizing because I really have work I want to do basically. And I love being able to focus all of my time and energy on that. But yeah, you have to balance it more, you know, like you have to think about, like you're let me make this super simple. You have to have an iPhone in your pocket because you need to keep a little human alive that you're responsible for.
Yeah.
I don't have to
Sure.
do that. On the flip side, as a writer and creative, I lived on the road for like a long time. I actually embraced the dystopia nature of the world, you know, like I went in the opposite, rather than be like, I need to de-risk life, play it safe, and like be a dad and be a man. I don't know if that's a controversial thing to say or not, but be like a provider and be there for these people that I signed up for this obligation for. And that's a separate, it's a different part of your brain, right? Like it, but then you also like, you need, you don't want to raise a kid who's like addicted to all this stuff, you know, like I can't imagine keeping it separate. Like you're just like all of us, you know, we're all in this world of having to play this game all the time, plugging in microphones to the wall and then talking into them out loud with other people. But I mean,
there are like so-called life philosophies or like educational philosophies that will stipulate like no screens or these hard rules or so on and so forth. And they never, you know, like none of these, I mean, as old as these philosophies are, let's say like Steiner's like Waldorf philosophy, he wasn't living in a 21st century global pandemic where, you know, our lives wholesale have shifted onto, you know, Zoom meetings and FaceTime hangouts and so on and so forth to survive, to live, whatever. So, you know, I know that a lot, for instance, just to say, I know more non-parents than I do parents for what it's worth. And there's no judgment, there's no shade on anything, you know, there's everyone's decisions are, for whatever reason, are good decisions. So just to get that out of the way. The other thing is, I don't think these philosophies as they stand are useful like household rules to like establish screen time, or like preventing from, that's like saying we're going to hide all the sugar and never give our kids sugar, and what's going to happen when they get out of the house, they're going to like binge all the sugar they can binge. I think from a you know, did not think I'd go into any kind of parental philosophy, but it's like I think it's more useful to establish emotional intelligence and lines of and just ways of communicating and understanding and introducing aspects of critical thinking, because we're all dealing with these things at any age. So there can be a little bit of like of timers and rules around like time or use, but you know, it's just more important to like have, you know, emotionally balanced conversation, just really just focusing on emotional intelligence and how to cultivate that at any age. Again, separate conversation. So something I'd like to touch on with you in this time we have now, because I know we're going to have a lot more conversations in the future, is you reached out to me, which was really flattering, because I usually have to like fish for guests, just to say that out loud. So when you reach out to me, you're like, I live outside of a big city. I'm basically off grid. Like my home is like a device-free area. My only device usage happens in my office. You know, I have this startup read up. There's a lot we can talk about. I was like, I want to talk to this guy. and I'm sure a lot of other people who are like looking for like people are reading books about, you know, how to digital detox, or how to like break up with their phone, or how, you know, all these titles for books. They're all kind of saying the same things in different ways. They all have utility, but they're all hovering around the emotions behind this very conversation. So
just trying to feel like you need to pull back a little bit. Because I think has not every person felt like they want to get away, and sometimes thank you again for having me, by the way. I appreciate this connection. I appreciate the chance to share this stuff, because one of the things that makes it hard for me to share my story publicly is, well, I just don't like talking about myself. And so much of why I'm motivated to do the work that I do, and what I mean very specifically is serve as the CEO of ReadUp and build a company and build a community and build a product that people all around the world are looking at their phones and laptops, and they're reading, which I'm very proud of, but still they're looking at black mirrors. And I'm the one who built the software, my best friend and I. And it's a lot to wrangle. It's emotional. I often feel wildly fraudulent and wildly hypocritical when I hear other people talk about imposter syndrome, and they're like Ivy League grads who work at a bank and like take a course on imposter syndrome or something like that at business school. I'm just like, there's like a distance here from reality where I actually feel sometimes like crazy, like I'm either running a Ponzi scheme, or like the way in which I live is like almost a fundamental lie, or like I'm doing something just for the sake of the story. There's so many different versions of these very weird thoughts that creep in. And yeah, you hinted at it before. I'm happy to share more information, but basically, like, I just stopped all the stuff for a really long time and in a really deep way. And frankly, before a lot of people started thinking about it, or at least before a really popular conversation, a global conversation began to develop over the course of the last few years. But I graduated from Stanford in 2010. It was during that time that I was an undergrad. And I grew up, mostly offline. I mean, there was like a brief little moment with MySpace, a lot of like late nights on AOL Instant Messenger, but I only had a flip phone. And then it was just like everything fell all at once. Facebook was only for college students when I was using Facebook. And in my freshman year at Stanford, which is where Facebook relocated to, like 100 feet away from campus, Mark Zuckerberg and a small team of people, that's when the newsfeed launched. And the very next year, Steve Jobs announced the very first iPhone, Apple iPhone 1. So right at once, social media, smartphones. When I graduated from Stanford, the cloud of dystopia was rolling in, like it was all lining up. And I was like just overwhelmed by all of it in ways that now, a strange feature of modern life now is, we don't need to be too old to sound really old. But like when I graduated from college, we were having conversations about like, oh, your prospective employers might see your Facebook page, and like, who do you want to be online? Stuff like that. Like, what is it to be yourself on the internet versus an anonymous thing on the internet? And the crazy thing is, just keeping this all in perspective, this is literally 10 years ago. It's not 20 or 30 or 40. A thought that just like bolted into my head like lightning, by the way, which now I feel like I have to share because that's a rule of this, is I'm currently kind of dating a guy who's 20 years older than me, 2 decades above me. So a lot of these conversations that I have about time and, the meaning of life and the way that the world has changed, my experience just seems so profoundly irrelevant as like a 34-year-old who's explaining, I grew up without the web. It happened hard while I was in college at Stanford, and then I got sucked into it. So then I worked in startups for most of the following decade, but I was in and out, like just feeling very much, I was going to say perturbed, but that's like a fancy bullshit way of saying depressed and anxious because of what these things were doing to me. Facebook, and then really all in on Instagram, like pretty cool and popular on there and like just in it. And you know this already, everyone knows this, the way it merges with your professional life, your social life, all like this merge was intense. I did a yoga teacher training in 2011 to try to like, fix myself. And I think it was just like, that's when the seeds were planted. It's the technology. That's what's doing this to me. It's not a tree. It's not a bird. It's not my lover. It's not my the way my parents fucked me up when I was 15. It's none of that. It's the fucking technology. It's like there's this thing. It's doing this thing to me. And this was like 2011, 2012, 2013. I just started doing this stuff to get away from it. Basically, my yoga teacher trainings were in Berkeley, and I was living in San Francisco. I would leave my I had a BlackBerry because it was like part of my job. I was working at this startup technology powered law firm. Actually went from iPhone back to BlackBerry, but same thing, using it all the time. I would put it in my desk. I was reading Dharma Bums at the time. I remember that very well. Pack a backpack, take Bart to the East Bay and walk up into the woods. And then every morning, walk down from the woods, have a cup of coffee, go to my yoga teacher training, and then walk back into the woods. And it's just like this, like, I'm still maintaining my type A professional life. I'm doing a yoga teacher training on the weekends, and I'm digitally detoxing hard. And then I would get back to work Monday morning, come in like smelling like, an animal and looking like I spent the weekend in the woods. But there was a shower there, get cleaned up. We were talking about facial hair before, but like, that's when I was just like, okay, there's like different modes of existence. And the digital detox was built into my life for like, it was just a thing, like it was a thing in my relationships. It's always been a thing with my family. Bill's offline again, or like, he's like hard to get. This is boring. If it's boring, I won't keep going. But basically, like, 2015, I literally walked into the woods, dug a hole in the ground with a shovel, and put my iPhone in it, and just watched the blizzard come down on top of it over the course of the next 3 days, and was like, I feel so good. Like, there's so many different moments all along the way, of like unplugging from this platform and yanking off this, and literally like, just like fighting with the phone companies to let me have my number on a flip phone. The individual stories are like, they just get lost in this like kind of soup of personal experience for me that I'm still the loop is not closed yet because the problem's not solved. That's the thing. So now my life is a 10-minute commute on partially a dirt road that gets me to this little office where I'm like so connected. I got like Mike, this, like all of my stuff is here. It's still a very modest and minimal space. And my home has none of this shit, just nothing. I am just, when I'm home, I can feel, yeah, that's the real conversation. That's like rather than just complaining about all of this all the time, there's just something that happens when you get free. It's yeah, man, it's just become such a hugely important part of my life. And yeah, I don't know if this is like the final end game, or actually, I'm sure it's not. But there's got to be a better way. People need it. That's why people like Kevin Roose are writing articles about like, I'm taking a course to learn how to fix my iPhone habits. Like this is why sometimes I have to be like, am I drinking crazy juice or not? Like, is the world actually like doing this? Because I see this stuff too. I've, been sending emails to Kevin Roose trying, like, we were in touch when I was like living out of my truck. It just wandering around, happened to be in Western Kansas going to a county fair. Like having to go to public libraries to send emails. I was like, Kevin, come find me. I have a story. And he was like, we never ended up connecting, but it's just like this funny little moment that happened to me years ago of just being like, I've just been living this, turning my personal life into an experiment. And it's just all pointing right at read up. That's the part for me that's so psychedelic. We're at this moment of a profound inflection where people are paying to read on read up. The community is growing, and we have humans who are putting their attention into an attention machine that I built to be ethical and to be good and to not use you against you. You know, like, just what is that like step by step by step. And oh my God, dude, keeping it alive and believing in it through thick and thin and up and down. It's been 5 years now of that. And so, yeah, this is where I rely on conversations with people like you to disambiguate the challenge of like wanting to give up. And in my case, I know exactly how to check out. I could have a really, really, really awesome unplugged life, like boom, right away. You know, some people, I think I've gone there. I walked into that world. I know how to do it. And also it's weird once you're like on this, like, you know, your eyes open, not, you mentioned before, like, what can you not unsee? This is the opposite version of that. This is seeing the light. This is like getting to the other side and being like, oh my God, there's like plenty of ways to make a living. I worked for 2 years at a gas station in rural Vermont. I was living in New Hampshire, right over the river. I had the most beautiful, breathtaking commute to work through a literal winter paradise. And then I showed up, pumped gas, made coffee, and worked as a cashier at this very, you know, like powerful, the store smelled like the fresh heat from the wood stoves. And my one condition when I showed up there, literally just walked in and said, can I have a job here, was I just don't want to look at any screens under any circumstances. Like, I can't have email, I can't have this, I can't have that. Just like, but I'll do a really good, I can move. Like, I ended up, most of my job was moving around milk and eggs and dairy products, and just taking care of a little small rural general store, gas station. And once you do that, you're like, oh my God, we don't all have to be in this crazy world. You know, like the current contemporary 2022, you know, problem with work, problem with life, problem with tech, all a problem with like global mental health, they're all connected. You know, like we need to, I think I incorrectly used the word disambiguate before, but we need to like separate these problems and then bring them back together again in order to solve them all. And that gets back to this crazy like stalemate that I think we were talking about before, which is like the general incomprehensibility of it all. You know, like it went for a question of that magnitude. What do you do? You know, I think try to have your distance, like you said, like screen time matters, but it's not the final answer. Like, there's so many things. I wrote down ice cream really big on a piece of paper right here. And I'm trying to remember, why did I write down ice cream? What did I want to say to Adam about ice cream? I've been talking for a long time though. I mean, is it, it's, I know you think it's a noble cause. That's why I reached out to you, but is there hope? You know, are we going to will we look back in 10 years and be like, damn, the like, you know, late 20s or like whatever you want to call this era, Trump, Brexit, COVID, Afghanistan, like the social media warfare going on. There is civil unrest going on right now related. I mean, yeah, it's a wild time to be alive. I think, hope, believe, have faith. We're going to look back 10 years and be like, it was a time of great chaos because the technology fucking sucked. So we've made it better, and we got it better. And we got to a place where we're better able to handle it, where we could have ice cream and enjoy it because we weren't binging and barfing on like highly processed sugars all day, every day. You know, that's the future is not like, it's not black and white. It's being able to handle this new toxic poison that we've built, because it's also a really cool pleasure. Like that's a really hard thing even for me to admit. But like scrolling through Instagram, I was just like, I've done it a few times recently, and looking at all of the pleasurable stuff on there, it's just like, damn, it's good. And there's a place for this in society too, for sure. I
We used to
mean,
flip. We used to flip through magazines while we're
yeah,
waiting in
yeah,
a
yeah,
doctor's office. It's the same. It's the
yeah,
same mechanism. It's the same mechanism, right? Where you just want to look at glossy images, and it's not solely from a place of like I want to envy someone's pleasure.
yeah, yeah,
You're just
totally.
you're just filling that void, right? You're in the
Yeah,
doctor's office, you're going to fill that void flipping through the
yeah,
magazine.
yeah,
The question is this: when like if VR headsets become, or whatever, AR glasses become ubiquitous, what's the balancing act going to be then? Are people going to, because like some people, not all people, some people go on retreat to achieve a modicum of what you've described as your life.
yeah,
I want to go on a writer's retreat. I
yeah,
want to turn my phone off for like 3 to 5 days,
yeah,
have this enriching experience, and then go back into my life where I'm going to look forward to that retreat for 362 days a year. So I mean, there's also something to be said about, at some point in the last, I don't know, 5, 7, 8, 10 years, we suddenly got unlimited data, right? You used to have to pay.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Data used to be a set, used to like, you can only get 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 gigs of data, and you're going to be paying out of your ass for it.
Yeah,
And so there wasn't
yeah,
this incentive to like want to binge on stuff. And so, you know, maybe in a hypothetical world in the next 10 years, when we can't keep all this up, or we run out of server space, or there's too many satellites in the sky, and like
yeah, yeah,
we have to find that valve, and like we cannot do unlimited data anymore, like
yeah.
maybe that's
I
when
think, yeah.
people.
Yeah, I don't know if there will ever come a time where it'll be about server speed or running out of space for satellites to fly around. It will have to be, I think, an awakening of human consciousness, where when you're looking, and screen time is one of those things, it like kind of like starts to fire this one specific train of thought, which is, that's a lot of my waking life looking at that. Binging, a word you just used. It's a lot of my life spent binging. We know what this brain state is. Neuroscientists have studied it. People inside of the largest social media companies have studied it. They don't want the public knowing about it or thinking about it. But it is a mode of passive consumption, where you are in a sort of minimized and like neurologically speaking, like closer to comatose state, where you're not fully awake. You're not firing the way that you and I right now having this intense conversation that we know is recorded are like firing. Instead, you're like, just like what it like, that is, there's nothing that like inherently wrong with that state. Humans need rest. We have to go sit on a beach sometimes. We have to like unwind, let go, and relax. And that might mean watch a movie, listen to music, dance, or scroll through your feed and connect with other people from all around the world using this brilliant, beautiful, incredible technology. But what we must remember is what it is, basically, like that it is a treat, that it is entertainment, that it is a release rather than like a deep enrichment. That's why read up is so helpful to people in their personal evolution around thinking about how they want to handle technology in their life in general. Is when you read, you realize it takes work. You have to like sit and focus and do the reading, and when you're done, you have like a cool sense of accomplishment. That's a beautiful thing, and it's a very unusual thing to be like, oh my God, I was just on my phone for 45 minutes and it was like good. Like I feel like I just really like, and 45 minutes on Twitter, you get like maybe 200 data inputs. You probably see like 100 images or more, and it's just like boom, 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 boom. On ReadUp, you take 45 minutes, you read a 45-minute article. Obviously, it's not exact, like, but that's our goal, is to get people away from the browsing and the skimming and scanning and just actually read and make use of that time. That's work. Work feels good. Going for a run, you don't do that, and then at the end of it, that like sense of like tired, it's not a negative tired. It's like a good, it's so good to have all the like muscles get all worked up and get to that place. And the opposite of it, where you've been like eating too much ice cream, like overly indulging, overly pleasure, like on a neurological level, it's dopamine, serotonin. It's like these things in your brain that feel so damn good. But then it comes with like, you pay in different ways down the line, with like that more empty, hollow, like needing to engage again. And I think one of the most like dystopian moments that I can remember, I mean, my whole life is a series of dystopian moments, it feels like, but one thing in particular where I remember like literally like reeling, like literally like wanting to like fall, like having to step outside and gasp for air. Hearing the CEO of Netflix say that their number one competitor was human sleep.
Yeah.
That brings me back to this feeling that what needs to happen here is a human awakening. And that's, I mean, my co-founder and I have had such bizarro conversations for years now of just being like, we can build something better. We can make it available. And we're doing a really nightmarish job of marketing right now, because we like don't use social media, and we're like these like, we just don't believe in like using all these tactics and things that other people use to like get and grab people's attention. And we genuinely believe that if we create a good, wholesome plate of vegetables, essentially, and sell it in a market where the only thing that you can get right now is free ice cream. But if we start building and distributing vegetables, it will catch on, like people, like it will happen. But we've also, had to wrangle with our own, well, in my, like, the personal experience of being like, oh my God, reading takes work. You have to do it. And then just frankly wondering, do people want it? When is this great awakening coming? When all of a sudden you'll be like, okay, we're spending 5 hours a day on technology. Like just, and when I say on technology, I mean looking at a black mirror. Let's just simplify this to your laptop, your iPhone. Look at your screen time, see how much you're doing it. 6 hours a day, 7 hours a day, 8 hours a day. These numbers have been going up with COVID. Boom, skyrocket, dude. Psycho dystopian shit. We're locked in our homes. We are dealing with a force that has a monopoly on violence and is militarily mighty in ways that are so hard to comprehend, that says, don't leave your home, don't meet strangers in public, stay inside. When you do go outside, wear masks. And we are all on our technology all the time. And I don't want to make any, I mean, I could go into a long, and maybe one day we will, political conversation about my personal feelings about living through all of this. But the main thing is just like that massive uptick in just like people like living their lives through screens is, to me, I was going to say frightening, but it's like not enough of a word, like it's like, what is life, and this is coming from someone who, I was saying before, like I spent a big chunk of the last decade really feeling like this is it, like we got it now, like there's going to be a big thing. And like I was on stage several years ago when ReadUp was previously called Really Reddit, a kind of like, play on Reddit basically. And we were spelled differently. It was a bad name, basically. Really Red dot it. So we did an accelerator program, and I was literally like on stage pitching there will be a big awakening and it's coming soon. And a bunch of investors, that were present in this conversation, even though we were unable to secure funding that time, people were hearing that and they were like, yeah, that probably makes sense. That's got to happen. And this like 2017, 2008, people were like, at a certain point, enough is enough. I mean, it's hard for me to remember now because global frustration with Facebook has gotten so out of control. It is a meme now at this. It's like talking about your feelings about Facebook is so ridiculous at this point because everyone knows how much of a colossal moral failure and nightmare it is, and we are living through it. That's just like broadly understood. But I just think it's so crazy because a few years ago, I was saying the exact same thing. You know what I mean? Like I was literally saying the exact same thing. It was like 2017. Now, to me, it seems like those were such like tepid times of like moderate frustration. And like, even as like this most recent thing with the whistleblower, like it doesn't even fit. These things, like, I don't know. It doesn't even, I didn't think there was anything new. Like I saw it and was like, why are we all pretending like we don't know what Facebook is and does?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this to ourselves and each other? Like what? And I hold the media accountable. I think we should all be holding each other accountable. But what are we doing right now? Looking at this person, Frances, who, thank you, Fran. I don't mean to like disparage what she's doing at all. It's brave, it's awesome. You got to like stand up for what's right when the time calls for it. But what are we all doing watching this charade and pretending like we didn't all know this and we haven't all known this? And I'm not even referring to people like us who are insiders. I'm talking about like, like old people, young people, like people all around the world, just everyone everywhere. This is not, there is no question about what Facebook is and does. And this idea that we are frustrated at them for what they're doing to us, I don't get it. I mean, it feels really backwards and confusing. It feels like we're having the wrong conversation, trying to be like, what is Facebook going to do to fix itself? And how are we going to hold them to account to fix themselves? Well, it's like telling macaroni and cheese to not be macaroni and cheese. If we want something different and better, let's build something different and better. But that's a thing that we know. It's a known enemy. We have undressed it publicly so many times. We've seen Mark Zuckerberg sitting and sweating and explaining something that makes no sense, which is the fake mission of Facebook that has to do with connecting people, which is not true. Facebook exists to make money, and they do that by getting you looking at your feed for as long as possible. If you're doing it for 3 hours, that's better than 2. If you're doing it for 2 hours, that's better than 1. The longer that you sit there doing that, everything else puts you there. It's also the model at Twitter and Reddit and Snapchat and TikTok and all. They want you looking at the things so they can show you ads. And it's free for that reason. We know this. Why are we still wondering what to do about it? I mean, and I want, we got to fight all the fights. We got to like, I'm right there behind the Center for Humane Technology while they try to get watching Congress try to talk about this stuff is dystopian. It's scary.
I think that is,
it's crazy.
I mean, for now, that's the only fulcrum, the only
startups, dude. Remember this. There are companies like ReadUp that are doing it. And I want to try. That's like, there's, because you're right. There are multiple fulcrums, I guess. And I apologize for the interruption, but like, I've been hearing that publicly for a long time. And I think I don't know. I have a lot of personal like baggage here, but like a lot of people want other people to solve the problem for them. That's not an answer. And that includes the government. But yeah, we need solutions coming from all angles. I'm sure you agree.
Watching people listening to how people are reacting to like the whistleblower testimony in front of Congress and stuff. It is kind of like a joke in the sense that like, I wonder how people in real time decades ago responded to like, wait a second, eating McDonald's is bad for you.
Yeah.
There's a moment
Yeah.
for some people. Wait a second. When the doctors were on television telling us what brand of cigarettes to smoke, they knew that it was bad for us.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is some equivalent of that moment. I'm not saying it's a facsimile.
Yeah.
This is the weird moment we're living in. And again, like it looks fucking embarrassing to watch Congress try and understand the fact that they've allowed this unregulated industry to, I mean, shatter democracy as we know it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, it almost looks like a Mr. Bean episode at that point. So
Yeah.
it's very Faulty
Well, yeah.
Towers. But
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, just in this last couple of minutes, like how do people interact in? Are there people interacting with each other within ReadUp, or is it like is it mostly an experience of like someone having a meaningful long read where they aren't distracted by ads or other content that's vying for their attention? Like what is
Yes.
the experience of people inside?
Yeah. So exactly what you just described is the primary or most important function of ReadUp, which is that we fixed digital reading. If you try to read, right, like literally, if I just say, Adam, as soon as this is over, go on the internet and read an article about composting or whatever you want to read about, you're going to have to go fight through a jungle of bullshit to just read. And that when the more that my co-founder and I bounced around so many different things. We actually started initially as essentially like a civil discourse plugin. That's why it was called Really Reddit. You had to confirm with our technology, which was, cheat proof, that you actually read something. And so ReadUp is able to identify whether or not you actually fully finished reading an article. And so we built that incentive, finish articles, into the entire social media experience. And from there, it was just like this ball that kept growing. We realized eventually, this was, I don't know, maybe 1, 2, 3 years ago, like it was just like an ongoing evolution of like what we're trying to do. That we started to see patterns emerging across all of the other free social media platforms in which their currency was this like or upvote. It's a quick click. It's a flinch. It's like, it doesn't matter if it's, I like my friend's Halloween costume, or I love the title of this article about Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden, or like, you don't, it's just like an instantaneous, like as fast as the brain can even be like, upvote, like upvote, like whatever you want to call it, that all the platforms have this. We think that that's a debased that's not a productive way to move information around the world. And so we pioneered this totally new, never before seen business model, which essentially operates around an idea or a movement. And we have hundreds of people using this thing all the time, actually thousands of people all around the world. But hundreds who are actively using this thing regularly. And yes, we obliterate ads. We sanctify and dignify the experience of reading. I read a 60-minute article last night, and I read a 14 or 15-minute article this morning. And they were insane, dude. It's crazy. Like, it's just that, like, I want to talk to you about both of them. Then I'm like, I do this sometimes. But it's just it's a totally different, more meaningful experience. And then, yeah, one more thing, which I haven't mentioned yet, which you kind of alluded to, is there's a community and a commenting experience as well. So when you participate in ReadUp, not only do you have this, like, it's essentially like opening a library book, like when you go to ReadUp, you read, but then when you finish articles, it opens you up into this community of other people who finished the things that you finished. So like in some cases, there are only 3 to 5 comments on an article that's like massively viral on Twitter. Like you can go on Twitter and find thousands and thousands of just everyone's weighing in because of this bombshell article, like 72-minuter that just came out in the New Yorker. You can go on Twitter and hear what everyone's saying and what they think about it, who you have no idea who's read it and who has not read it. Mm-hmm. But according to data, which everyone has access to, a tiny little fraction, like 1% of people who view articles are actually reading them. On ReadUp, it's the exact opposite. On ReadUp, you just have like an intelligent conversation with a small group of people who read the whole thing. So it's a very, very different, it's a different way to experience the web. And it's very ambitious. But I love that part of the work. We've been toiling in, I was going to say relative obscurity, and then I realized that's a nice way to put it. We've been toiling in absolute obscurity, literally hiding, and building this thing that we really believe in. And now it's exciting, nerve-wracking, crazy making. I need to just make sure to keep myself in check. But now we're coming out. We're sharing it with the world. We're just ready for it. And there's this really exciting, but also nerve-wracking feeling when you've been watering a seed and watering it and watering it and watering it and watering it. And then it's boom, sprout. Holy shit. We know this is going to be a thing. Yeah, I want to keep it good. I want to make sure it stays good. And I want to do it all out loud. I mean, that's part of it for me, is just sharing why we're doing this. And we've done that for 5 years. I mean, if you want to weird look inside my head, very literally, and my co-founder's head and the whole community, you can look back at our blog and our community. We've been doing it for almost 5 years now, of just and it's so meta too. I can't use that word anymore, but we've been reading about human technology.
Man, we got to reclaim. We have to reclaim that word. Fuck them.
Yeah, totally. No, it's yeah. Thank you so much for having me here, and I hope we have more time to talk in the future, because I feel like we're just getting to the good stuff, and there's just a lifetime of work ahead of us to figure out how we want to operate in the world right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, I really appreciate the time. I'm going to end this recording, and then we can schedule the next conversation. I love chaptered conversations. That's the best thing for me. In all transparency, I haven't even had the time to look into ReadUp. I'm finishing a emotional well-being coaching training this week. Cool. That I've been in for the past few months, but I am super excited. What you described with your story is super enticing to join the community. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing. And I look forward to the next conversation. Thanks, Ben.
Totally. I appreciate it so much. And if I didn't believe that, first of all, that this was the beginning of a longer relationship and an opportunity to essentially convert an early adopter, if I can't get someone like you excited about what I'm doing to the point where you want to be a part of it, you know what I mean? And I know that that's a lot to ask, and I don't expect it to happen after 1 or 2 conversations. And I also don't expect you to just pop on ReadUp and be like, this is the future. I want your engaged and sustained, wrangling with the thing with me. It really should be an emotional and a meaningful thing for you to participate in ReadUp. But I'm curious to know how it goes for you. And I really don't want to try to push you into it or whatever. But basically, I mean, it's hard to just remind myself to stop and sit and read regularly. And the success of the company depends on, because that really arguing about what's going on with the whistleblower is the context of the company and the product that I'm building, but it's not the pitch. It's not like Facebook's a nightmare, ReadUp, or we're living through dystopia, ReadUp, global chaos, ReadUp. It is reading rules, and reading's amazing. And it's a good alternative to what a lot of us spend a lot of time doing online. But I'm curious how it clicks for you, and if it clicks for you, because it's we have a long way to go, basically. But
Sure.
I love the work though. Thank you again. Sorry, I kept you over time, but
That's all good. Hey,
whenever
thank
you're
you
ready
so
for
much.
another one, we'll do it again.
Yes, we will. All right.
Perfect.
Take care.
See ya.
Bye.